They made their move. Now it is my turn. The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and hit the concrete floor of my garage. The sound bounced around the room and shot through the thin wall that separates my workshop from our kitchen. A beat later, I heard my 17-year-old daughter, Emily, in that sharp voice she uses when she wants to hurt. "Mom, I cannot believe you have put up with him this long. He is such a loser. At least now you are finally getting what you deserve." I froze under the hood of Mrs. Thompson's old Buick, my hands still locked around the alternator I had been fighting for the last hour. Oil and rust filled the air. It could not cover the bitter taste crawling up the back of my throat. My name is Mike Walker. I have been fixing cars in the Rust Belt suburb of Riverton for 22 years. I married my wife, Laura, when we were both young and foolish. Back then she said my calloused hands and blue-collar swagger were charming. Now she is a paralegal at Brighton & Associates, the flashiest law firm in our little corner of nowhere, and I am still the guy who gets his fingernails dirty to pay the bills. "Honey, lower your voice," Laura said through the wall. There was no real worry in it. Just the careful tone of someone who has been living two separate lives for a while. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and moved closer to the door that connects the garage to the house. After 18 years of marriage, I have learned the important things come out when people think you are not listening. "Why?" Emily said. "He is probably too busy playing with his toys to notice anything." She laughed. The sound scraped like a file on metal. "Besides, everyone at school already knows about you and Ryan. Maddie's mother saw you two at that hotel bar downtown last Friday." I shot through my veins. Ryan Keller, real estate hotshot, perfect teeth. The man who drove his Bayerisch motor and Werke to my shop one time and then decided I was not upscale enough to touch his precious German machine. Ryan, who Laura swore was just a friend from her new gymnasium membership. Ryan, who must have been doing more than holding the weight rack for her on Friday nights. "Maddie's mother needs to mind her own business," Laura said, and I could hear the worry push into her voice now. "And you need to be careful about what you say. Your father is not stupid, even if he acts like it sometimes." "Thanks for the vote of confidence, sweetheart," I muttered. I backed away and went to the Buick. My hands trembled. A simple alternator swap felt like climbing a mountain in work boots full of water. My mind started lining up signs I had not wanted to see. The late nights at the office that piled up over the last 6 months. The new clothes, fancy and not our style or budget. The way she started hitting the gymnasium every Friday evening and came home with perfect hair and fresh makeup, like she had spent more time at a mirror than on a treadmill. The phone calls that ended the second I walked into the room. I finished the alternator on muscle memory while my head spun. When I heard Laura's car pull out of the driveway, no doubt on her way to another client meeting, I made up my mind. If my wife was cheating, I was going to prove it. If she figured I was too thick to catch on, she was about to learn how wrong she could be. 3 days later, I was at my buddy's boxing gymnasium, nursing a beer and watching him punish the heavy bag like it owed him rent. Tony Russo has been my best friend since high school. Back then he was a Golden Gloves champion, and I was the kid keeping his motorcycle alive. Now he owns this beat-up gymnasium on the rough side of town, training would-be tough guys, and has been fighters who still believe they have one more shot at glory. "So, let me get this straight," Tony said between combinations, breath puffing. "Your wife has been acting strange. Your daughter thinks you are a joke, and you want to turn yourself into a private eye." "I do not want to play anything," I said, taking a long pull. "I want the truth." Tony stopped working the bag and faced me. We are both pushing 50, but he still looks like he could go 10 rounds with men half his age. His face is mapped with old scars. His eyes are sharp and clear. "Mike, you sure you want to open that can of worms?" he asked. "Sometimes not knowing is easier." "Too late for that," I said. "I have heard enough to know there is something going on. Now I need to know how bad it is." He nodded, slow and steady. "What do you need?" "Help with some surveillance equipment," I said. "Nothing fancy. Just a small camera I can hide in a hotel room." Tony's eyebrows jumped. "You are really going all in, huh?" "She thinks I am too dumb to figure it out," I said, hearing the anger rise in my voice. "Let us see how smart she really is." The next Friday evening, I parked my pickup across the street from the Riverton Motor Lodge, a worn-out place that rents rooms by the hour and does not ask many questions. I had spent the afternoon setting a tiny wireless camera in room 237, the same room where Laura had been meeting her lover, according to the credit card statements I found hidden in her jewelry box. At 7:30 in the evening, right on schedule, Laura's silver Honda rolled into the lot. She sat there a few minutes, checking her makeup in the rearview mirror, then walked to room 237 with the easy stride of someone who had made that walk more than once. About 15 minutes later, Ryan's beige motor and Werka slid in beside her car. I watched through my binoculars as he stepped out, smoothed his careful hair, and knocked. When the door opened, I saw my wife's shape framed in the doorway, lit from behind by the cheap orange motel light. She wore a red dress I had never seen before, tied in the right places and showing more skin than she had shown me in years. They kissed, long and hungry, right there where anyone passing could have seen them. Then the door shut, and I sat in my truck staring at the drawn curtains, feeling like someone reached inside my chest and tore out my heart. But I was not finished. Not by a long shot. I called Riverton Flowers, the late-night delivery service that caters to guilty husbands and last-minute romantics. "Hello. I would like to send champagne and chocolates to room 237 at the Motor Lodge," I said, keeping my voice level. "Please include a card." "Sure thing. What would you like the card to say?" the clerk asked. I smiled, and I know it was not a friendly smile. "Smile? You are live on camera." About 20 minutes later, I watched a delivery kid knock. Ryan opened the door. Even from across the street, I could see confusion on his face. He read the card. His look flipped from puzzled to a mix of panic and anger. The door slammed. Behind the curtains, shadows started moving fast. They were hunting for the camera, but I had tucked it inside something that looked exactly like a smoke detector, same as the others in the room. I started my truck and headed home, whistling under my breath. Phase 1 was done. Now came the fun part. At 9:45 in the evening, I dropped a message into our family group chat. Me, Laura, Emily, and Laura's parents. The message was a simple link with the words, "Thought you might find this interesting." Then I set the phone on the table and waited. The first call came from my mother-in-law at 9:47. I let it roll to voicemail. The second call came from Emily at 9:48. I let that one ring out too. By 10:15, I counted 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, ranging from confused to angry to plain furious. Laura did not come home that night or the next morning. She finally opened our front door at 2:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. She looked like she had aged 5 years in less than a day. Her carefully styled hair was a mess, her makeup was smeared, and that red dress was wrinkled beyond saving. "We need to talk," she said, voice tight. "Do we?" I sat at the kitchen table, calm as I could be, eating a sandwich and reading the newspaper like it was any other Saturday. "Mike, please let me explain." I looked up and really looked at her, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Explain what, Laura?" "Explain how you have been sleeping with your gymnasium buddy in a cheap motel for the last 6 months? Explain how you have lied to my face every Friday night. Or maybe you want to explain how you and our daughter have been laughing about what a pathetic loser I am when I am not in the room." She flinched like I had slapped her. "You do not understand. Ryan and we never meant for this to happen. It just—" "Save it," I said. "I know this speech. It just happened. It did not mean anything. You never wanted to hurt me. Did I miss any of the classics?" Tears started down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. The man who would have comforted her, who would have tried to fix it, who would have blamed himself for not being enough. That man died somewhere between hearing my own daughter call me a loser and watching my wife kiss another man in a motel doorway. "What do you want?" she asked at last. "I want a divorce," I said. "I want you out of my house. And I want every person in this small town to know exactly what kind of woman you have been." Her tears stopped like a switch had been thrown. Something cold came into her eyes. "You think you can destroy me? You think anybody cares what some small-town mechanic has to say?" "We will see," I said. She straightened her shoulders. In that moment, she looked like the same woman who had been playing me for a fool for months. "You have no idea who you are messing with, Mike. I am not some helpless housewife you can push around. I have friends. Important friends. Ryan is one. And there is Tina Martinez." Laura folded her arms like she was settling in for a fight. "She is an attorney, and she is very good at what she does. When she is finished with you, you will be lucky to keep this house, let alone that precious garage." I had heard the name Tina Martinez. Hotshot divorce lawyer. Moved to Riverton about 5 years back. Folks said she came from Chicago. Reputation for being ruthless. Apparently, she had also turned into one of Laura's new pals from that professional networking group she loved so much. Bring it, I said. Laura smiled, and it was not kind. You were always too stupid to know when you had already lost. When she left, I sat at the kitchen table and turned her words over in my head. Tina Martinez. The name scratched at something in my memory, but I could not place it yet. It would come to me. In the meantime, I had work to do. If Laura wanted to play hardball, I was happy to step onto the field. Underestimate your opponent, and you lose before the whistle even blows. I pulled out my phone and called Tony. Remember when you said I might not want to open this can of worms? Yeah, it is open. I need your help turning it into a tool. Monday morning, a courier who looked like he would rather be anywhere else handed me a thick envelope. I signed for it with a smile sharp enough to make him take one step back. Divorce papers. Tight. Thorough. I had to hand it to Tina. She did not miss a trick. Laura wanted half of everything. The house, the garage, my tools, even my truck. On top of that, she was claiming emotional distress and asking for alimony based on her supposed reduced earning capacity due to the trauma of having her privacy violated. I had to admit, the woman had nerve. I drove to Brighton and Associates to deliver my response. Their offices sit in the nicest building downtown, glass and steel, trying to look like it belongs in a city that has not seen important since the steel mill shut down in 1987. The receptionist had perfect teeth and a practiced smile. I am sorry, Mr. Walker, she said. Mrs. Martinez is in court today. Would you like to leave a message? Hand her this, I said, sliding an envelope across the counter. Inside was a single sheet with 5 words. Your move, counselor. Let us play. I was halfway back to my pickup when someone called my name. I turned and saw Tom Bennett, once my best customer, the man who had sent half the town my way over the years. Tom owns Bennett Construction, and his line of work trucks kept my bays full for close to a decade. Mike, glad I caught you, Tom said, but his face did not match his words. He looked like a man about to drop a cinder block on my foot. What is up, Tom? I heard about you and Laura. I am sorry, man. Divorce is rough. Thanks, I said, waiting for the other shoe. The thing is, some of my guys are talking. With all this drama, they are worried about bringing the vehicles in. They think you might be, distracted. You are firing me, Tom. It is not personal, Mike. It is just business. Maybe after things settle down. After things settle down, I repeated. Right. He had the grace to look ashamed. I am sorry, Mike. I really am. No. You are scared, I said. Scared that being seen with me will smudge your shiny reputation. Here is some free advice, Tom. If you are afraid of your own shadow, you end up living in the dark. I climbed into my truck and drove off, leaving him in the lot looking like he had taken one straight to the gut. I was not finished with him. Not even close. The rest of the week followed the same pattern. 3 more customers canceled their service contracts. The fellas at Murphy's Tavern, my Friday night crew for 15 years, suddenly found excuses to sit at other tables. Even Mrs. Harris, my 70-year-old neighbor who has brought me homemade cookies every Christmas since I moved in, crossed the street when she saw me working in the yard. By Friday evening, I was alone in my garage, surrounded by half-finished jobs and empty beer bottles, when Tony showed up with a 6-pack and a look that said he had heard the bad news already. Heard you lost the Bennett account, he said, dropping into the old folding chair I keep by the tool chest. Among others, I said. Funny how fast 20 years of handshakes and favors disappear when things get messy. People are sheep, Mike. They follow the herd. Yeah? Maybe it is time someone reminded them what happens when the flock picks a fight with the wolf. Tony lifted an eyebrow. That does not sound like the Mike Walker I know. The Mike Walker you knew was a sucker, I said. He believed in playing fair, telling the truth, treating people with respect. Look where it got him. So what are you going to do? I smiled, and this time I did not care how it looked. I am going to give this town exactly what it is asking for. They want a villain. Then they are going to get one. They already think I am the bad guy for exposing my cheating wife. They think I am the problem because I will not quietly disappear and let everyone pretend nothing happened. Fine. If they want me to be the villain in this little show, I will lean into the part and play it right. I stood up and walked to my workbench. For 3 days I had been sketching out plans. Not just anger on paper, steps. Steps that would make my wife and her boyfriend wish they had never heard the name Mike Walker. What is that? Tony asked, peering over my shoulder. That, I said, is how you turn a mechanic into a monster. Phase 1 rolled out Monday morning. I spent the weekend gathering information, and what I dug up was even better than I hoped. Ryan Keller was not the successful real estate big shot he pretended to be. His agency was wobbling. He was behind on the payments for his Bayerisch motor and Werka. His biggest account belonged to a development company that cared a whole lot about keeping a family-friendly public image. I started with his pride and joy, that shiny black Bayerisch motor and Werka he parks behind his office every morning. It took me 10 minutes with a can of spray paint to turn his status symbol into a rolling confession. Cheater, in bright red across the hood. Homewrecker, on the driver's door. And my favorite on the rear window. Ask me about my married girlfriend. I was long gone when he found it, but Mrs. Harris, who had apparently decided I was worth talking to again, was happy to deliver the play-by-play. According to her, his screaming echoed for 3 blocks. Phase 2 was a little creative postal work. Ryan lived at Riverton Gardens, a fancy apartment complex for young professionals who want to feel important. The building used a central mail room, which made it easy for me to slide a special package into every resident's box. Inside were photocopies of Ryan's credit card statements showing regular charges at the motor lodge, plus a friendly note letting everyone know that their neighbor in apartment 4B likes to spend his evenings with other men's wives. I included my wife's name and workplace to be thorough. By Wednesday, his landlord had a stack of complaints tall enough to start eviction proceedings. I was only warming up. Thursday morning, I paid a visit to Pinnacle Development, Ryan's biggest client. I did not walk in as Mike Walker, angry husband. I walked in as Mike Walker, concerned citizen, carrying a manila envelope stuffed with documentation about one of their agents' extracurricular activities. Sir, I said to the company president, I figured you would want to know that one of your agents is engaged in behavior that might reflect poorly on your reputation. Robert King was a thin, fidgety man, the kind who builds a business on the belief that scandal poisons sales. He flipped through my papers, and the worry lines on his forehead got deeper with every page. This is very troubling, Mr. Walker. Very troubling, he said. I thought you should know, I said. A company with standards like yours does not want to be tied to this kind of thing. By Thursday afternoon, Ryan Keller was out of a job. Friday brought the grand finale. I learned Ryan had been using a company credit card for those hotel visits and filing them as client entertainment. That was not just adultery. That was fraud. Fraud gets attention. I did not call the police. Too obvious. I sent an anonymous tip to the state attorney's office with copies of the statements and the hotel receipts. Let them do the math. By Friday night, Ryan Keller's world looked like a building after a tornado. No job. Eviction on the way. A car he would be embarrassed to drive. And a likely investigation into credit card fraud. All of it in 5 days. I was not finished. Saturday morning, my phone rang. Mr. Walker, this is Tina Martinez. We need to meet. Do we? My client is prepared to be reasonable about the divorce settlement if you will agree to end your harassment campaign against Mr. Keller. I laughed. Harassment? I have not harassed anyone. I made sure the truth about his character reached the people who needed to hear it. You have wrecked his life. He wrecked mine first. I am just evening the score. Silence hung for a long beat. Then she said, quieter, you do not know who you are dealing with, Mr. Walker. Funny, I said. I was thinking the same thing about you. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and turned that conversation over in my head. There was something in her voice I had not heard before. This was not just an attorney talking for a client. This felt personal. Then it hit me. Tina Martinez. I knew the name because it was not always Martinez. 5 years back, when she first came to Riverton, it was Tina Kowalski. And 15 years before that, Tina Kowalski had been my business partner at a little garage we ran together on the south side of town. That garage failed because she was skimming money from the business account to pay for law school. That garage wiped out my life savings when I had to buy her out just to keep the doors open one more month. That garage taught me never to trust a partner again. Tina Martinez did not come to Riverton by accident. She came looking for payback, and my cheating wife handed her the perfect opening. I smiled. Things were getting interesting. The showdown landed at the annual Riverton Community Block Party. It is that quaint tradition where the whole town piles into Riverside Park to pretend we are one big happy family. It was just right for what I had in mind. Public, packed, and wired with a sound system that could carry to every corner. I showed up early in my best jeans and a clean shirt, carrying a folding chair and a cooler like any other guy ready for a sunny Saturday. What I did not advertise was the manila folder tucked under my chair, a folder full of paperwork that would make this a day nobody would forget. Laura arrived about an hour later with Tina Martinez. Both of them dressed like they were headed to a country club instead of a neighborhood barbecue. They posted up close to the bandstand, clearly staking out a spot to make some kind of statement. Ryan rolled in about 20 minutes after that, looking like a man who had crawled through hell and misplaced the exit. His Bayerish motor in Huerca was in the paint shop, so he was driving a beat-up rental that probably cost him more per day than he was bringing in now that he was unemployed. He scanned the park, jittery, then joined Laura and Tina. Public eyes made him sweat. The first few hours drifted by smooth enough. A softball game over on the diamond. Face painting for the kids. A dunk tank with the firefighters taking turns on the hot seat. I played my part, chatted with neighbors, bought raffle tickets, and acted like a man trying to move forward after a hard split. But I kept one eye on the bandstand and waited. My moment showed up at 4:30 during the community announcements. Mayor Dawson was at the microphone thanking sponsors and volunteers when I stood and walked toward the stage. "Excuse me, Mayor Dawson," I called, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I would like to say a few words, if that is all right." He looked puzzled, but he handed me the microphone. The crowd hushed, maybe expecting an apology or a plea for sympathy. They were wrong. "Folks, thanks for coming out today," I said. My voice carried clean across the park. "It is good to see our community together. It reminds me why I have been proud to call Riverton home for the last 20 years. Out in the crowd, I saw Laura and Tina trade worried looks. Ryan stared around like a rabbit eyeing the tree line. "I know there has been talk about my personal life," I went on. "Some of you heard that my wife and I are getting a divorce. That is true. What you might not know is why." "Mike, do not do this," Laura called, but I kept going. "I found out my wife has been having an affair with Ryan Keller." I pointed straight at him. His face went red, and he half rose from his chair. "They have been meeting at the Motor Lodge every Friday night for the last 6 months and paying for those little getaways with company credit cards." The park went quiet enough to hear the river. "But that is not the interesting part," I said. "The interesting part is what happened after I found out. Instead of owning up, instead of trying to fix our marriage, my wife decided to try to bury me. She hired a lawyer, Tina Martinez, right over there, to take everything I have and leave me with nothing." Tina was on her feet now, shouting about slander. I kept talking. "What makes this really fascinating is that Miss Martinez is not just any attorney. She has a personal grudge. 15 years ago, back when her name was Tina Kowalski, she and I ran a little garage on the south side. It ended badly. She has been waiting for a chance to settle that score, and my wife's cheating looked like the perfect opportunity." I reached into the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. "I have documentation showing Miss Martinez has been planning this for months. Bank records, email messages, even a recording of her coaching my wife on how to hide assets during the divorce." That last part was not true, but the crowd did not know that. They were leaning in, eating out of my hand. "And here is the best part," I said, grinning now. "While Miss Martinez was busy plotting my downfall, she made one small mistake. She started sleeping with her client's boyfriend." The gasp rolled across the lawn like a wave. Laura went white. Ryan looked ready to puke. Tina stared at me like she would set the grass on fire with her eyes. "That is right, folks," I said into the mic. "The lawyer who is supposed to be looking out for my wife's interests has been having her own affair with Ryan Keller." I held up a manila envelope. "I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, even some lovely photographs that a private investigator shot last Tuesday afternoon. Anyone want to take a look?" "You bastard!" Tina screamed, lunging toward the bandstand. "You lying bastard!" Tony stepped in quick. His big hands were gentle but firm as he eased her away from the microphone. "I know what some of you are thinking," I went on. "You think this is messy. You think it is shameful to air dirty laundry in public. You are right. It is messy. It is shameful. But do you know what is worse? A whole town turning its back on a man because his wife chose to cheat on him. Friends vanishing because scandal makes them uncomfortable. People who have known him for 20 years suddenly deciding he is not worth their time." I looked straight at Tom Bennett near the back, where he was trying to blend into the trees. "So here is what is going to happen," I said. I am going to give this town exactly what it has been asking for. You wanted drama. Now you have it. You wanted to pick sides. Now you see what every side really looks like. I handed the microphone back to Mayor Dawson and stepped off the stage. The place exploded. Laura was crying. Ryan was arguing with someone who was calling him names from the crowd. Tina was still shouting at Tony to let her go. I made it halfway to my pickup when Tom caught up. Mike, wait, he called. I owe you an apology. Do you? I was wrong to cancel our contract. I let fear do my thinking. Yes, you did. I would like to make it right. We all would. Over his shoulder, I saw a small knot of former customers and old buddies walking up, faces full of shame and regret. Would you? I asked. We were wrong, Mike. We should have stood by you. I nodded once. Yes, you should have, but you did not. That tells me what your friendship was worth. Mike, please. I am not interested in fair-weather friends, I said. I am not interested in people who only show up when it is easy. You made your choice when things got hard. Now I am making mine. I climbed into my truck and drove off, leaving them in the lot. In the rear view, the crowd still buzzed around the bandstand. They would chew on that scene for years. When I got home, Emily was on the porch with red eyes. Dad, she said, standing as I came up the steps. I am sorry. I am so sorry for what I said. I sat beside her. Are you sorry because you meant it, or because you got caught saying it? She stared at her shoes for a long beat. Both, I guess. I was mad at you for embarrassing Mom. I did not know about the other things. The lawyer, the money, all of it. Your mother made her choices, I said. They were not my fault, and they were not yours. Can I live with you? I do not want to stay with Mom anymore. I put my arm around her. We will figure it out. That night I sat in the garage with a beer and thought it through. In one way, I had won. The people who set out to hurt me were knocked down. My name was no longer dirt. My daughter was home. But there was a bill to pay for that kind of win. I became what Laura called me. A villain. A man who fought dirty, who swung low, who did not care about collateral damage if it meant hitting the target. The funny part was, I was at peace with it. Sometimes being the villain is the only way to win. Sometimes you have to do what the heroes refuse to do. Sometimes you have to walk through the dark to find your way back to the light. I raised my beer to the empty room. Thanks for the lesson, I said. It has been enlightening. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Laura received nothing. The prenuptial agreement I insisted on 20 years ago turned out to be ironclad, and her adultery knocked out most of her claims anyway. She moved to another state with what was left of her pride and whatever cash she could scrape together. Ryan Keller pleaded guilty to credit card fraud. He got 2 years of probation and a heavy fine. Tina Martinez lost her license to practice law after the state bar reviewed how she behaved during our case. I kept the house. I kept the garage. I kept my daughter. Tom and the others came crawling back with apologies and new contracts, but I turned them all down. I learned I do not need friends who only stand by me when it costs them nothing. I have Tony. I have Emily. And I have the plain satisfaction of knowing I beat them at their own game. People in town still cross the street when they see me, but it is not pity anymore. It is respect and a little fear. They know now that Mike Walker is not a man you want to cross. They know the quiet mechanic who fixes their cars and minds his own business can do things they did not imagine. That is fine by me. Funny thing about being the villain. Sometimes it is the only way to win.